We're starting a new topic today. It talks about coordination, but unlike the coordination of the nervous system, today's coordination is going to be run by these glands you see in this picture. So, generally speaking, we have two coordination systems. One that is for the short term, we call it the nervous system. That's the one we've been studying last time. So if you're to pull your hand from a hot object, if you're to blink, if you're to sneeze, all these reflexes are run by your nervous system. Now, for long-term responses, I'm talking about things like related to blood sugar. We rely on another system. We call that the endo. Do you know what endo stands for? Endo means inside. Endocrine system. The endocrine system is made of glands, like the ones you see in the picture, and those glands release their content, release their chemical. We usually call that chemical, we call it a hormone. They release those hormones inside your body. We got several glands. The ones we're required to learn here in our syllabus is this one. We're going to talk more about the pituitary gland when it comes to the reproductive system. So that's one we're going to do later on. For today's class, we'll be talking about the pancreas, and we also be going to be talking about the adrenal gland. I'll start with the adrenal gland, then the role of the pancreas. Let's just get back to the first part, the endocrine system. What's meant by an endocrine gland? So let's take the pancreas as an example, okay? So this is my pancreas here, and I want to show you how does the pancreas work as an endocrine gland. We've seen the pancreas in a different context. If you still remember, we've seen the pancreas in context of digestion. It makes enzymes to break down food. But today, we're going to see the pancreas doing something totally different. We'll see the pancreas actually releasing hormones. Those hormones will be running straight inside your bloodstream, meaning the hormone will be released. We usually use the word secrete in this context. To secrete is to release. It's the same thing. So the pancreas secrete those hormones. They'll run everywhere in your body. So it has a general response all over the body. But to make sure that the hormone will reach to those organs, we usually call them the target organs. Those target organs, those are the ones that are meant to respond to the hormone. They come with special receptors. See these here? Those receptors are the ones that ensure that the hormone will specifically target these organs. By the way, the hormone to receptor is just like enzyme to substrate. Antibody antigens. You see how many combinations of things that are complementary to one another? The enzyme and substrate, the antibody, the antigen. And today is the hormone binding to its receptor. Once it binds there, it will cause changes. It will make the organ respond to it. So, for instance, in the context of the pancreas is responsible to control your blood sugar. So, in this context, that hormone here will allow your cells to absorb that extra glucose you have in your blood. So ensure that your blood sugar stays at a healthy level. So let's just recap on what hormones are. So to be a hormone, it's a chemical. It's released by those special endocrine glands. They are traveling in your blood. They get everywhere in your body, specifically to the target organs. Once they reach those organs, it will cause changes that is characteristic to this hormone. So like if it's insulin, the hormone responsible to control your blood sugar, it would let those cells absorb glucose. All right, tell me if you have any questions so far. Let's take one example of a hormone. You've probably have heard of it. I'm gonna show you more about a hormone called adrenaline. Now, here's an example. This guy is walking in the jungle until the time he saw like the scariest thing you could see, which is a snake. Okay? We have a snake here. Now, obviously, you would be getting scared if you see a snake. Now, at this moment, you will start to release the hormone adrenaline. Do you see what happened to his pupils? When you get scared, your pupils widen. And this has a great advantage. The great advantage of having wider pupil means that you have a wider field of view. You can see things better if your pupils are wide. You get more line, you see better. And that's going to be very helpful in his case. Do you know why is this going to be helpful? Because it will allow him to do one of two things. Number one possibility is that he is going to fight. Right? What does that mean? It means he's going to engage, fight with the snake, which is not very likely. Or, which is more likely, he is going to run away. We call that flight. So in stressful conditions, you release adrenaline. That adrenaline is going to let you do one of two things. Either show aggression, fight, or run away. Now, let's continue what happened here. So as soon as he realizes that he is in danger, first the brain has to realize. Then signal goes all the way to his adrenal glands. Those adrenal glands are found right on top of the kidneys. So the small glands you have on top of your kidneys, and they'll secrete adrenaline. Adrenaline is gonna run everywhere in your body. So it goes everywhere in your body and starts to cause changes. So it targets your heart, makes your heart beat faster. It makes you breathe faster. It charges your muscles with glucose, oxygen, so that you would either run away or engage in a fight. So that's what we call the fight and flight response. Okay, so as you can see here, when the adrenaline is secreted, it targets four main organs. We've seen that with the pupils, they widen so you can have a better field of view. With your heart beats faster, you breathe faster, and it even goes to the liver. Again, think about it. What am I aiming for? I want the guy to either fight or flight, meaning I need his muscles to be charged up with glucose and oxygen. So the oxygen is going to come from the air. He's breathing faster. The heart will pump the blood full of oxygen and glucose. He's having wider field of view. The only thing we're missing now is sugar, glucose. Obviously, he's not going to eat at the moment. Actually, when you're stressed, you don't feel like eating at all in the first place. So that reason, we're going to rely on the glycogen. We're going to rely on the glycogen storage you have inside your liver. So that's the whole thing about the fight and flight response. You're now fully charged to take actions. Okay, so let's recap with another example. There's an earthquake in this example. It's so scary. I've been in one of those occasions when there's an earthquake and it freaks you out. you secrete adrenaline. So first thing, the adrenal glands are stimulated. Where are these found? They're found right here. And then you release the adrenaline. It goes everywhere in the blood. So the blood will ensure that the adrenaline goes everywhere. You see that he's breathing faster, his heart is beating faster. You start to look pale, actually, right? Don't you realize that people who go into an exam, they don't look very, like, they look pale, and you don't feel like eating. Why these things happen? Why do we start to look pale and we lose, like, urge to eat during those fight and flight? Simply because of what? Simply because adrenaline tries to channel all of your energy to the purpose. You are either to run away or engage in a fight. So the blood on the surface of your skin is going to be diverted. Where's it going to be diverted? It's going to be diverted to your muscles. That's what really matters. The muscles are the ones that you really. So you would start to look paler. You start not to feel hungry, so that the blood is gonna go all the way to those muscles. So you have an action you do here. We call that action vaso or vessel constriction. What does that mean? Meaning you narrow the blood vessels, those that lead to your skin, and you divert the blood instead to your muscles. So the last thing you need now is to digest. You're not going to digest food at the moment. You don't need the blood to be the surface of your skin. No, majority of the blood will go to your muscles. So let's recap on the effect of adrenaline. First, it's where is it made? Someone asked me, like, where is adrenaline made? I'll tell them it's made in the adrenal glands right here. If someone asks me, like, how's it going to be transported? Tell them in blood plasma. That's where you transport everything, okay? Number three, target organs. I can list several target organs. I can list heart. I can list the muscles, liver. It even makes you breathe faster. Okay? So that will prepare someone's body for that flight or fight response. Okay? Do you guys have any question? Any question about adrenaline? Now, let's try something. Let's try to compare between what we're doing today, the hormonal system, and the nervous system. If you guys think that this response we're talking about is hormonal, put letter H in the chat box. Think it's nervous, put N, okay? So let's think about it. Which one of these responses is actually the faster one, right? I'm expecting everyone to answer, right? Which one runs by mean of impulses? Okay, so which one of those responses that we're talking about today is run through electric impulses? That's going to be here. Chemical signals, that should be what? Should be here. Now, think about this one. Which one has a more widespread effect? Which one is general, goes everywhere in your body? That should be hormonal. Which one has long lasting? Which one has a response that may stay for years? That think of growth hormone. in your body, it lasts with its effect for long time. Now, this one's tricky. Think about it. Which one is always involuntary? What does involuntary means? Meaning it is something that you don't decide. It's something that you don't do consciously. That is hormonal. With nervous, you have an option, right? Many, like you talk, that's with your nervous system. You swim, right? You do involuntary actions with your nervous, but here it says what? It says always, okay? To control your blood sugar, what do you need to control your blood sugar? You need hormonal, okay? If the signal is run with your blood, that is here, and which one has electrochemical? Do you know what that chemical part here? Last time when we were doing the nervous system, we said that you have synapses, right? And with those synapses, you have chemical, and along the nerve, you have chemical. Okay? Any question? Now, I want someone who's brave to do this along with me. Anyone could try this passage? Let's try Leanne.
Okay, so it is released during fight
That
or flight.
that fight or flight response is very good. That's what we call like stressful times. From where?
From the adrenal gland.
That's right. Adrenaline causes your heart rate and breathing rate too.
Increase.
That's right. Hayat, can you try the other one? Thank you.
It also breaks down glucose in the liver.
We break down not the glucose, the larger version.
Oh, a glycogen.
Yes, very good. As a result, what's gonna happen?
Um,
So when we have glycogen and we are breathing faster, you're gonna get two things, right? You're gonna get glucose and oxygen. Thank you very much. Alia, Ala, sorry, Ala.
Yes.
You want to continue?
Yeah.
So continue.
Um, by
What
respiration,
causes? Yes, very good. By respiration. Adrenaline also causes,
the eye,
where the eye you increase?
the lens,
The small circle.
pupil,
Yes, very good, Ala. Okay, all good. So that was the first part of the lesson. We did hormones. We still have two more hormones to do today. But before we get there, we're gonna have a quick look on how do we run this process. What does it mean when say like homeostasis? Homeostasis itself is like two words. First part means same, okay? And the other part stands for state. So if you put these together, homeostasis, meaning to maintain or to keep that same state inside your body despite what happens outside. So again, the secret of being alive is to maintain this process. As long as you have homeostasis, you'll stay alive. So how do we do that homeostasis? We have several organs responsible for homeostasis. Mainly is the brain. The brain is that the part where we coordinate, Okay? You have muscles. Many people don't realize that the heat in your body is mainly generated by your muscles. Your skin contributes to temperature control. We're going to see later how your skin helps you to cool down when you sweat. Lungs for carbon dioxide levels. Kidneys, water level. Pancreas for sugar level. Okay? So for today's task, we're going to be working on muscles, skin, the role of the brain, the pancreas, and the other two we have already done. We did the kidneys, okay? We did the kidneys in the excretory system, and we also did lungs. And this is the point when I'm going to tell you the good news. We're going to have a test next week, next Wednesday, this time. It's going to be what? It's going to be about the gas exchange and respiration. Okay? So just prepare those two topics for next week. Okay? Someone is praying that I don't write this respiration. Okay? So be prepared for this next week. Anyways, let's just remind you of what was homeostasis all about. Homeostasis is to maintain an internal constant environment. That's one important definition worth 1 mark. So let's talk about skin. Let's talk about how does your skin help us to stay warm or to cool down. With your skin, you have that top layer. We actually call that top layer, we call it epidermis. Right underneath, you have layer of fats. This fat layer is quite important because it helps you to insulate. So you need those fats, certain layers of fat, so we can stay warm. In addition, I got receptors. We've seen those receptors last week in the context of nervous system. So you have heat, cold, pressure, pain receptors, all on the surface of your skin. In addition, you have sweat glands. Those sweat glands have a channel, and that channel opens on the surface of your skin. See, there's pores in your skin. Those pores are meant for sweat to come out. You do also have hairs. All mammals come with hairs, right? And every hair comes with tiny muscle. Time when it gets cold, you know what those hairs do? Those hairs stand, okay, with the help of that muscle. And when the hairs stand, this means that this will trap air in between, okay? So you see this, it's not obvious in humans because we don't have much hair left on the surface of our skin. But you see this in other mammals. If you have a cat, you've seen a cat on the street, when it gets angry, when it gets cold, it becomes fluffier. All the hairs stand, and that helps them to insulate. Or in times of aggression, when the cat is angry, it increases its size with those hair. Looks scary to the opponent. All right? So again, with your skin, you have all these tiny organs, and they're mainly responsible, as we're going to see here, they're responsible, those in front of you, they're responsible for temperature control. In addition, I have like a small loop of blood vessels. This loop of blood vessels is made of a small artery, what we call a small artery. We call a small artery an arteriole, a small vein, and you have capillary right near the surface of your skin. In addition, you have something known as a shunt vessel. That shunt vessel is quite very important for temperature control. Now, to understand how this loop of blood vessels works, let's just together draw something. Can you draw this along with me? So I am gonna draw this here in black. Can you draw like letter A? Draw like this. Okay. And do one small island here. I'm gonna fill that island with fats. So there's a layer of fats here. Okay. And I'm gonna complete that letter A with those blood vessels. So you have one blood vessel here. You have another blood vessel here. Okay. So remember what the name of those blood vessels. You have arteriole, you have venule, okay? And you have everywhere else, you have blood, okay? So that is gonna be blood. Just gonna show it here. Oops, think it's open somewhere. Yeah, it's here. Right. So what happens? Let's assume that it was cold like these days. What would you do if it's getting cold? You're gonna do something like this. You want as little blood as possible to get through the arteriole. How do you do this? You make that arteriole here, you make it narrow, okay? And you make that shunt vessel, you make it wide. By doing so, you'll ensure that the blood is gonna run under that layer of fats. And that means what? That means that the blood is not getting to the surface. You're not losing heat through the surface of your skin, which is a good thing when it gets cold. So again, this blood vessel being narrow here is what I call vaso, means vessel, constrict. Okay? Vasoconstriction. That is a blood vessel getting narrow. And that one here, I'm going to call it vasodilation. It's getting wider. So again, the whole purpose here is to ensure that the blood runs nicely like this without going to the surface of your skin. And as long as the blood is under that layer of fats, you remain warm, you remain insulated. Now, let's take the opposite case. Let's take the opposite case. That is if you are in a warm place. So in this case, let's see what's going to happen. This time, I want to get as much blood as possible through the arteriole. So I do vasodilation, all right? Meaning a lot of blood comes from the origin. I make that shunt vessel. I'm gonna make it wide, so I'm gonna make it narrow this time. Whenever this arteriole is dilated, the shunt will do the opposite, and vice versa. So how do I make this narrow? I do vasoconstriction. And this means what? This means the blood will run to the surface of your skin, and you'll actually lose heat. How do you lose heat? When you get red, when you're in a warm place, you start to look red. As you turn red, you lose heat by radiation. You know, like you take this in physics, that objects that are red, warm, they lose heat on the surface by means of radiation. Okay? So let's recap first on the skin, different parts of the skin, and then we repeat that part about control of temperature. So I want somebody to try to match these actions here with the correct organ of your skin. So who could try this one? Alia?
Yes, Mister. A is thermoreceptors.
So we got a thermal receptor. Thermal receptors, they are to detect the temperature in your surrounding. Who is gonna do the next one? Nisma?
C. Secrete sweat.
So you secrete sweat when it gets hot, and that is meant for what? That is meant to lose heat. How do you lose heat when you sweat? When somebody is sweating, let's say we have sweat here on the surface of the skin. You know how's this gonna help? Suddenly you have water on the surface. As the sweat evaporates, you will start to lose heat, right? You can do the same action by putting water in your skin. When you have water in your skin, you will cool down. Sweat has the same effect. Abakir?
E contracts when it's cold.
So E, that muscle, helps to contract, and it would make the hairs stand, and that helps you to insulate. And then we got Miss Noor.
B traps air.
So hairs trap air, and that is meant for what? That is meant to insulate. The hairs on the surface of the skin trap air. It works just like a jacket to insulate the body. And with blood vessels, we do vasoconstriction, okay? Are we good? Any question? All right, so we're gonna label the different parts of that skin. So can we do this on this other diagram? Who is there to help me matching these with the skin diagram? Let's try anyone. Yara, can you match any part that you know?
I think V is the sweat gland.
That is very good. So that is that sweat gland. Here you go. So I'm just gonna write the letter on it. U is sweat gland. And who is gonna match something else? Anyone? Carmen, can you match any label?
I think the R is the arterial.
R is a hair. R is a hair, right? Let's try Miss Rahma.
Is V the receptor?
V is the receptor. Okay. Yes, I want you, some of you could try. Does your mic work, Sama? Yusuf?
Is P the fat tissue?
That's fat tissue. Good one. Noor, would you like to try?
Yes. It's going to be 1 second. Arteriole is S.
That's
No,
very good.
or
Yeah,
or
wait, it's
S.
correct.
Okay.
So that is S. How do you tell? Remember when we drew the A letter? We drew it like this. So the one where it starts from, that's an arteriole, right? That's the shunt. T is shunt. Okay?
Thank you.
Any question? All right. Now let's try with Dora here. Look, we're going to expose her skin to different conditions. First, we're going to try to expose to heat. Now, I want you to take a close look at the sweat gland. See what she's secreting sweat on the surface of her skin. And that ensures what? That ensures that she will cool down when? When that sweat evaporates. When the sweat evaporates, it absorbs heat from her body, and that allows her to cool down. Also note that her blood vessels are widening. Do you remember what we call it when a blood vessel widens? We call this vasodilation. Moreover, the hairs are flat. Why hairs being flat on the surface of her skin is a good thing. That means that she is not going to insulate. She needs to lose heat, so hairs remain flat. On the other hand, if it's getting cold, the opposite is going to happen. Hairs stand, okay? Sweat stops. And you notice that blood vessel, look at the blood vessels. The blood vessels are getting narrower. That is known as what? That is vasoconstriction. Okay? So again, we have seen vasodilation and vasoconstriction. If it's hot, it's going to be the arteriole that is widening, okay? And the shunt is constricting. So that widens, increase, that is decrease in diameter. If it's cold, you're gonna do the complete opposite. This one will constrict and the shunt will widen. Sometimes when it gets really cold, what do? You do such an action. Many people shiver, right? Shivering does help a lot when it gets very, very cold. You shiver when you fail to control your body temperature through your skin. How do you do this? You do this with quick contraction relaxation. As your muscles are contracting and relaxing very fast, that means you're going to release a lot of heat energy by respiration. Okay? And if it gets too hot, we sweat. And why sweating is also helpful? Because as she sweats, the water evaporates and it sucks heat from her skin, cooling her body down. The question is, how do we coordinate this? How do we ensure that this thing is happening? With temperature control, we rely on the nervous system rather than the endocrine. Why rely on the nervous system? Because it's critical. You need to respond as soon as possible. If you fail to respond, it's going to become trouble. Why? Because enzymes denature when it's too hot. Enzymes slow down when it gets too cold. That's why we need a nervous control to do so. So let's check here. This guy is in a cold place. As it gets cold, first, receptor detects that cold temperature. Through a sensory neuron, we're going to take an impulse all the way, where to? All the way to his brain. As it gets to his brain, the brain will respond by checking the temperature inside the body, comparing it to the outside. You actually have heat receptors in your brain, and the brain does what? It basically compares the external temperature to the internal temperature. The brain doesn't care about the temperature in the environment. It cares about your core body temperature. That is the temperature in your head and in your chest, abdomen. So this is the core temperature. That's what really matters. Hands, feet, they don't really matter. They may get cold, they may get hot, it's not a problem, but your vital organs, that is your heart, that's your brain, they must remain at constant temperature. If for some reason that temperature drops, then you start to take actions. How do you take actions? Now the brain is going to send nerve impulses through a motor neuron, is going to get to the target organs. In my case, I need to do vasoconstriction, limit the amount of blood gets into the surface of the skin. I also need the hairs to stand so that we could insulate. All right? So that is how you do it if it's getting cold. What if it's getting too hot? What would you actually do? You'll now first detect sensory neuron, it goes to your brain again. The brain starts to check the temperature inside your body. If that temperature rises, then again, that might be very risky. And that might denature. So for that reason, what would you do next? You send motor impulses to the target organs. In my case, I need first to let those hairs go down, start sweating, and do vasodilation, making as much blood goes to the surface, capillaries, and lose heat by radiation. Okay? You have any question about this? Let's try this together. I'm gonna show you those lines and you guys tell me whether it is true or whether it's false. If you think it's true, put T. If you think it's false, put F, okay? Let's start with the first one. Shivering heats up muscles and warms the blood flowing through them, okay? So when you shiver, you're gonna warm up and let the blood raises temperature. Shivering is just like an exercise, right? When you shiver, just like you're taking a quick exercise, and that is true. At low temperature, extra blood is diverted to the skin so that you raise your body temperature. Is this true or false? Think about it. Do we take more blood to the surface of the skin when it gets cold? Do we do vasodilation in the arteries as it gets too cold? It's actually the opposite, right? We divert the blood away from the skin so that we don't lose body temperature, body heat. Next, skin warms up when sweat evaporates. So as you sweat, you're gonna actually warm up. Do you guys still remember that sweat is meant to suck heat from your body? When you sweat, you cool down. So that is false again. Blood is diverted away from the skin when the core body temperature drops. Do you think that this is true or is it false? That is true, right? You do vasoconstriction, prevent the blood going to the surface of your skin. Before the last, when heat evaporates, heat is transferred away from your body. True or false? That is true, right? Sweating helps you to lose body heat. Last one, body temperature is only controlled by receptors in the skin. So the whole system is done in your skin. But we have seen that this is not the case because your brain is largely involved here. Okay? Now, let's check how do you actually control your body temperature. Let's see what neurons are involved in this. So let's assume that this guy here is feeling hot. So what are you going to do? First, we are going to detect, so I will use that thermal receptor in his skin. Then we run with a sensory neuron. Where is this going to go to? This is going to go all the way to the control center. The control center in this case is the brain. In your brain, you got a relay. That relay neuron will change or will take that impulse to your motor. And in such a case, you'll be taking it to an effector. You know, like from last time, effectors could be one of two things. They could be muscle or a gland. Okay? My case, it's a gland. But it could also be a muscle. Let's take an example of someone who's feeling cold. In this case, the effector changes. It could be a muscle in those hairs, make it stand, or you could make muscles in the entire body shiver, and that will help him to release heat. Now, this action of opposing what happens around you is what we usually call negative feedback. What does negative feedback mean? Negative feedback is one important definition. We had today the definition of homeostasis, to keep constant environment. And we have another definition which is called negative feedback. Negative feedback is when you oppose, when you reverse internal condition. What does internal here mean? It means inside your body, taking corrective actions, meaning you do certain actions like shivering, sweating, right? To oppose the disturbance. The environment always challenges us with things like heat and cold and sugar level. So we always do the opposite, trying to do what? Trying to stay alive. You stay alive if you keep homeostasis, if you maintain internal environments. Again, this word is two parts. Negative means you do the opposite. Feedback meaning you're always informing your brain about the changes in the environment. So the brain then takes actions. What are these actions the brain does? The brain would make you sweat, make you shiver, so that you maintain a constant internal environment. You maintain homeostasis. Okay? Do you understand, again, what's meant by negative feedback? Let's explain it again. Let's try again. What is negative feedback? So again, in my case here, what do I have? I have some changes occurring in the environment. You see his body temperature? His body temperature is always fluctuating, increasing, decreasing continuously. And that's normal. There's no way you will keep the temperature always the same. So what do you do about it? You first inform your brain. Your brain, informing your brain is that feedback. So you send impulses to your brain. Your brain then does what? Your brain take corrective actions like sweating or like shivering. Okay? You do all of this for one purpose. You do this to maintain homeostasis. You keep your body temperature at set limit. What do I mean here by set limit? Meaning that range of temperature between like 36, 37, that keeps you healthy, right? So that is what negative feedback mean, okay? Take a stimulus, inform your brain takes corrective actions, and then you restore that healthy body temperature. So if it's hot, what do? You first take the action to the brain. Following this, the brain sends motor nerve impulses. And these are my corrective actions, including sweating, including vasodilation and shunt vessel constricting. So that is if it is getting hot. If it's getting cold, what would you do on the other hand? Same thing, right? Still negative feedback. You first inform your brain through sensory nerve impulses. Then the brain takes actions, and these actions could be what? Could be shivering, vasoconstriction in your arteriole, and shunt vessel doing always the opposite. Okay? Does that make sense? We're going to try to make comparison between heat and cold. Like, what are the actions you do when it's hot? And what are those actions you do when it is cold? Okay? So let's start with the first one. Which one of these is actually involuntary? So which one of those actions we do is not involving your brain? Is it going to be heat, H? Is it going to be cold? Or is it going to be both heat and cold? Both actions are involuntary, right? You don't bother deciding, do I sweat now or do I shiver? No, it's done automatically, right? When do hairs stand? So when is the time when hairs stand? Hairs stand when it is cold. Think about it. When is the time mammals like dogs breathe faster? So breathing faster is an action we do. We don't without realizing when it gets too hot. Why breathing fast like would help you to cool down? Because as you breathe fast, the heat from your body comes out, and that helps you to cool down. Sweat on the surface of the skin evaporating, that is obvious, right? When do we speed up the rate of respiration? You do so when it's too cold. We respire way faster in winter than summer. Your metabolic rate tends to be faster in winter. Reason to try to warm up. That's why you actually feel like crave for sweet stuff. You eat more in winter than summer because you're trying to stay warm. Now think about this one. Is this cold or hot when your arterioles are constricting? Vasoconstriction in the arterioles is going to be when it is cold. That is when you're trying to limit the amount of blood going to the surface of your skin. How about the shunt vessel? Shunt vessel widens. Is this heat or cold? Always, if the arteriole does something, the shunt will do the opposite, right? And what does that stand for? Rapid muscle contraction. Rapid muscle contraction, I mean here the skeletal muscles all over your body. That is shivering. And you do this when it's too cold. Okay? We are now gonna change the topic because we still have to do the control of blood sugar. But before this, can you guys try this question? So could you tell me what you think is the correct answer? I am still waiting for 2 people to answer. You could do this soon. So the question says, in order to prevent the human body from losing heat, what do you have to do? So those arterioles near the surface of your skin are meant to do what? They are meant to do vasoconstriction. Okay? They're referring to the arteriole. Can we do another question? It's question 2, number. You try this, please. The question says, during a race, an athlete's skin temperature rises, means the surface of his skin is getting hot. What would cause heat to get to the surface of your skin? The answer should be answer, can I say it? It's answer D. Why is it D we picked here? I think many of you didn't realize something here. When I'm choosing D, I am referring to the fact that the temperature in the skin is rising. Okay? So I need to divert more blood to his skin surface. And you can only do this by doing what? By doing vasodilation of your arteriole. Okay? Someone saying C, vasoconstriction of blood vessels in the skin. No, that wouldn't make your skin warm up, right? Your skin, if you do vasoconstriction, then that means what? That means that the blood was going to get less to the surface of your skin. The question clearly says what? Skin temperature is rising, right? So you need to divert that blood to the skin surface, not the other way around. What did you choose, Noor?
Yes, Sir Hassan. No, I actually have a question.
Yeah.
May I?
Sorry. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Can you please repeat the answer to question 1 and how we got it?
Not this one, the previous one?
Yes,
Yeah, sure.
my internet.
This one here, we chose prevent the human from losing heat. What do you do to the arterioles? You would actually do vasoconstriction because this guy here is feeling cold.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Next time, if you get a question and they're asking you about changes of blood vessels, always think of the main blood vessel. What's that main blood vessel? It is the
Arterial.
arteriole, which is the one mainly responsible for control of body temperature.
Okay.
Most welcome. Now,
Thank you.
next, we're gonna take a look at how do we actually control blood sugar. You may ask me, like, why we're really concerned about control of blood sugar? Simply because with blood sugar, if it goes too high, that actually makes us dehydrate. It makes your skin, sorry, forget the skin. It would make your body cells lose water. You know, like we've seen this in the lesson of osmosis. If I put solutes like glucose outside a cell, water diffuses out osmosis and cells shrink like this. If blood sugar goes too low, you would be in danger, right? Because your cells rely on sugar for respiration. So that is also trouble. So we really have to do what? We really have to maintain sugar level within set limit. Did you notice that even with temperature, I don't say keep it constant. It's too difficult to keep it at same value. No, we keep it within a healthy range, right? Goes up, goes down, but nonetheless, that range we keep the blood sugar in is quite important. So how do you do this? We have a whole system to make sure that the blood sugar is always the same. Let's say she is having like carbohydrate rich food, her blood sugar is going to rise. So that will increase her blood sugar. At that time, she will respond by secreting a special hormone from her pancreas. We call it insulin. What does that insulin do? Insulin targets two organs in your body, mainly the liver and the muscles. And what does it do to those organs? It asks them to absorb as much sugar from the blood. For what reason? To ensure that your blood sugar stays the same. You already have too much sugar. She ate ice cream. So blood sugar is rising. I don't want that sugar to stay in the blood because as long as in the blood, it would cause trouble. As long as in the blood, it would crenate those cells. You don't want that, right? So you take that sugar and you store it inside your liver, inside your muscles. Now, what if she is exercising? When you exercise, your blood sugar this time is going to drop. And again, because we don't want that, your pancreas will secrete another hormone. Now, be careful with the spelling here. It's called glucagon. How many words we've seen that sound similar? We know glucose, right? Which is a sugar. We know glycogen, which is another sugar you store in your liver. But this is a hormone. So this is a hormone responsible to do what? Responsible to release sugar in your blood. When you exercise, when you're fasting, what do? Your blood sugar drops. To ensure that your blood sugar stays constant, you release this hormone. And again, it goes where? It goes to your liver mainly. And it asks the liver to do what? It asks the liver to release sugar in your blood. Let's take this example. Somebody has been eating candies like these. They're so sweet, they're so unhealthy. Okay? Nonetheless, people eat them. So what is expected to happen to their blood sugar as they consume that sugar? First thing, the blood sugar is going to rise. Okay? That's not good. So what do? You'll first detect that rise in blood sugar. So the pancreas detect. We don't have a brain here. Why don't we have the brain being involved? Because this action is not really urgent. It is important. It keeps you alive, but it's not as urgent as body temperature. So what would the pancreas do here? Your pancreas will secrete insulin. Insulin goes from your pancreas. Where's it going to go to? It's going to go to your liver and muscles. And what does it ask these organs? Take away the sugar from the blood. Take it into your liver, store it there, and this ensures that you stay alive. You maintain homeostasis. Right? So, who can do this again? Can somebody arrange these in the correct order, trying to control blood sugar? Aiden?
B is first,
All right.
then A,
All right. Do you have photographic memory?
E,
Carry on.
E,
E then.
is it C?
Yeah.
I think it's F,
All right.
then G, then D.
So I'm gonna put it that way.
Okay, G, F.
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, so this means that we now probably know how to control blood sugar with insulin. That's the case again. That's the case if blood sugar is risen. So again, let me repeat this one more time. You consume carbohydrates. Blood sugar rises, and that's danger, right? So what do? Your pancreas is always watching. Your pancreas is always checking on your blood sugar. If he finds that there's a lot of sugar now in your blood, what will the pancreas do? The pancreas will send a hormone known as insulin. Where is this going to go to? It goes to your liver and the muscles. In both cases, look what it's going to ask them. It's going to ask them to absorb the blood sugar. So that sugar is going to go inside your liver, and we're going to convert that sugar from being soluble to being insoluble. That glycogen that we have here is insoluble, it's big, it's going to remain stuck inside your liver. Okay? So that is the action you take if you have eaten. You're always trying to do what? You're preventing this from happening. You don't want to dry up. That's why actually we get thirsty if you eat something sweet. You feel the urge to drink water. But if you wait longer, you realize you're no longer thirsty because your insulin has done its job. What if she's exercising? Her blood sugar is going to drop. Okay, so again, because she doesn't want to go dizzy, she doesn't want to faint. If her blood sugar goes too low, what's going to happen this time? Pancreas again detects that she doesn't have enough sugar. So the pancreas is going to send the hormone glucagon. That glucagon is going to go to her liver. What's it going to ask the liver? Do you remember that sugar we stored there, the glycogen, is going to be broken down, released from her liver to her bloodstream. So now she has a backup, she has enough sugar running in her blood. Now, there's one like exam tip. If you're writing answers and you're writing some conversion, you're converting glycogen to glucose, glucose to glycogen. It's always worth a mark if you could say this mark, say this thing. You say, it's done with enzymes. Like while I was writing these events, do you remember what I wrote? I wrote enzymes convert. I don't say glycogen turns to glucose or the other way around. It doesn't happen like magic. No. In biology, for any conversion, for any chemical reaction, there's always an enzyme. So it's worth mentioning that in your answer. So let's compare between the two things. Okay? When you eat food, your blood sugar is going to rise. So you secrete insulin. If you exercise, if you don't eat, your blood sugar is going to drop. Here's going to be insulin. Here's going to be glucagon. And let's mark this as A. mark this as B. When is the time when I break down glycogen to glucose? And when is the time I do the opposite? Think about it. Which hormone is responsible for glycogen turning to glucose? And which hormone is responsible for the opposite action? Who could help me figuring out which hormone is which? Shahad, do you know which hormone is responsible for which? Ahmed?
Sorry,
Yep.
glucagon is A.
So glycogen to glucose, is this insulin or glucagon, the one that does that?
Glucagon.
So that is glucagon. So that is A, that is B. Very good. Okay? Again, glucagon is gonna break down the glycogen, releasing the glucose. And insulin is gonna do the opposite. All right? So let's make quick comparison between these two things. So again, which events will increase your blood sugar and which events will lower your blood sugar? Can we try this? So if you think it's lowering, put L. If you think it's going to increase, put I, okay? So I versus L. So number one, lowers blood sugar. Which one is responsible to lower your blood sugar? Is it insulin or is it glucagon? When my blood sugar is high, when I eat something sweet, I really need my insulin. Glucagon does the opposite. Does exercise lower your blood sugar or does it increase your blood sugar? So when you work out, what do you expect to happen to your blood sugar? It could be like this. Having a meal is, especially if the meal is rich with carbs, it's gonna rise your blood sugar. If you respire faster, so time when you are respiring faster in your cell, what would you expect to happen to your blood sugar? That should lower. This reaction, if this happens, if your blood sugar, glucose, converted to glycogen, what would you expect to happen to your blood sugar? That should lower it, right? Because you're locking away the glucose from your blood. Opposite, right? Muscles absorbing blood sugar. That's why you see this in little kids when they eat something sweet, eat candy, you find them they become hyperactive. They go like crazy. Why does this happen? Because the muscles gain a lot of glucose and they respond by breaking down that sugar. Okay? Now, the last thing for today is going to be this. Diabetes, which is the case when people fail to control their blood sugar. So type 1 diabetes is called an autoimmune disease. What does autoimmune mean? Autoimmune means that your immune system, instead of fighting bacteria, releasing antibodies, destroying bacteria, which is the normal thing. In this case, instead of destroying bacteria, those antibodies this time are destroying body tissues, like the pancreas, for instance. And this would cause what? This causes that part of the pancreas responsible for insulin to be destroyed. All right? So again, this is why we call it auto, because it's self-destruction. Your immune system is thinking of body organs like your pancreas as antigens, as something that needs to be destroyed. Now, there are signs that tell you if somebody is having diabetes. There are usually 5 signs. First, it's tiredness. Reason is that the body is not making use of the sugar they eat. Majority of the sugars are not being absorbed by the muscles, by the cells in general. Also, urination, frequent urination. Why does this happen? You have way too much sugar in your blood that you start to lose that sugar. Your kidneys try to get rid of that sugar by urination. And as we've seen today, when you have high blood sugar, you start to get thirsty because having sugars outside your cells make them dry up. Weight loss. Again, the sugar comes in and out. You're not absorbing that sugar into your body cells. And the most obvious sign and like the conclusive sign that somebody's having is when the blood sugar goes beyond certain limits. So again, what are the signs of diabetes? 5: thirst, urination, exhaustion, weight loss, and high blood sugar. How do we treat it? How do we deal with it? Now, lifestyle and medications. First, lifestyle. You need, or someone who has diabetes needs to control their diet. Have a diet that has low amount of carbohydrates. Also, insulin is a protein. You can't simply take insulin as tablets, as pills. Why? Because if you take it as pills, it's a protein, you'll digest it and you're not going to make a use of it. So instead of that, insulin is rather injected into the bloodstream. We also have to do regular measurement of blood sugar just to make sure that everything is under control. So if the blood sugar goes too high, people with diabetes take insulin. All right? And that means that we're done with this topic. Tomorrow we'll solve questions about it. And don't forget, next week, this time, you're going to have a test about gas exchange and respiration. Okay? For now, I'm going to let you go if you don't have questions. Sema, can you open your mic if you have a question? Noor, you have a question too?
No, thank you, sir.
Most welcome. Bye.
Mister, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So why is tiredness a part of the
Symptoms.
diabetes? Yeah, why?
Reason is that, as I told you, sugar gives you energy, right? But when the body doesn't like release insulin, the sugar is not gonna get to the body cells, right? So the sugar stays in the blood. So as long as the sugar doesn't get to your brain cells, doesn't get to your muscle, you'll start to feel exhausted because you're not getting enough energy.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.